Oh boy, once again it's that time. Time for the Fike Club. How you guys doing? My name is Richie Fike, and I am a 40-something father of a 13-year-old genius.
Thank you. That's very appreciative.
Well,
I love all your compliments. They're so nice.
It's really self-described. You've decided to let everybody know that you believe yourself to be a genius.
Actually, no. On the first episode, you called me that. So I don't say it, you say it.
Right, but an ongoing theme of this show has been how sarcastic you think I am. So how come you don't think that I was being sarcastic when I called you a genius? Well, just so you guys know, that extra laugh that you're hearing in the background is the laugh of a 60-something, is that correct?
68.
Yeah, 60-something-year-old grandfather. We have the legend, the man, the myth, the one who his name rings out in these streets, Edgar Allen Fike III.
That's correct.
That's right, Edgar Allen Fike III. Welcome to the show, my dad, Justice's grandpa. Well, how does it feel to be a part of the Fike Club, man?
Hello, America. How are you?
I totally forgot he was.
This is an honor.
I forgot his name was Edgar Allen Fike.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Dad,
Totally.
how is it that the name Edgar Allen Fike came about?
My grandfather, Edgar Allen Sr., was the first one, and his son, Ned, was Edgar Allen Jr., and my nephew, Ned, is Edgar Allen IV.
Right.
We have no fifths yet. We're counting on Justice or Judah.
That was supposed to be
or
me,
Owen,
by the way.
my great grandnephew. What do
Yeah.
you call it? My grandnephew. Maybe he'll pass it on. Now Owen's middle name is Edgar,
Oh.
and
So,
his sister's name is Emily Ann. And their mama said that's enough of this EA stuff. So Owen was not allowed to be called Edgar Allen V.
see, I think if you, Justice, because we're not having any more children. I don't think we are, unless the Lord does something amazing. And if we have more children, Lord Jesus, if you're listening, I want a baby girl.
I do too.
Okay, but I don't think
Good luck.
Edgar is a very pretty name for a girl.
Yeah, and I would not count on me to name a child Edgar.
Edgar's not really a terrific name for a guy. I always thank my Uncle Ned for coming along. And
How did you get from Edgar to Ned? I've never understood this.
this is the story I was told by my grandmother. When Uncle Ned was born, there was a real close friend of their family named Ned. And he came over there and visited Uncle Ned when he was just a little baby. And he said, "That boy's named Ned." And it stuck. Because I think
Wait, now who is this? Who is this random person that's walking around changing people's names?
this was in Omaha, Nebraska.
That child's name is now...
Ned Fike.
That's a Ned. That's what the guy said, and it stuck. And I think my grandfather, didn't want to have two Edgars being called by his wife, my grandmother Florence, and so that's the way it came out.
We appreciate her machine. Well, let's talk more as we walk towards Father's Day. The three of us decided that we would watch the movie that you suggested. This movie, Dad. And before we tell what the movie is, why is this movie kind of so special and important to you? Like, why do you love it so much?
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I truthfully don't know why you say we're not going to say the movie when in the title of the podcast you say the movie.
Actually, no, because for example, last week when I titled the podcast #BuckNugget, and I think you know why.
Yeah, I know why.
Right. No one can discern from Buck Nugget that we're going to be watching Princess Bride, right?
Certainly not.
No, okay. So you're right though. We could go ahead and say what the movie is. In fact, let's just dig into it. It's now time for the movie of the week. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
The movie of the week.
Movie. See the movie. So for this week's movie of the week, Grandpa, my dad, you picked what you said is in your... Did you say this is in your top 5?
I would say so.
Top 5 movies. Okay, so why don't you give us your top 5 and exclude the name of this movie from your top 5, and then that can be your last one.
I thought about that because you asked me about it. I can't remember all of them, but one of them was Saving Private Ryan.
Saving Private Ryan.
That was a great movie.
Justice, have you seen that one?
Nope.
Okay.
It's pretty graphic, the first part of it, but it's a heck of a movie. Anybody that's seen it, I think, would agree. What else did I say? What other movies did I tell you? I'm freezing on the air.
There were some random ones, like old ones.
Oh, Remember the Titans.
That's not too old. That's one that we absolutely need to watch.
Yeah.
And I agree.
And I'm going to get bullied for not saying.
I agree with y'all about Hoosiers. And
but you love Hoosiers.
I don't like it.
We didn't really like it that much.
You didn't like Hoosiers?
Now, it's still Dana's favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, because she...
It is. I mean, it's entirely true. That's what I like about it. And
so you like movies that are like based on true stories?
A lot of times, yes, that's true. I think that's a theme you could go with. And a lot of old Western movies. High Noon was a great movie. That wasn't a true story.
And now it's an ESPN show.
Movie. Hmm?
Now it's an ESPN show. High Noon.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
9
well,
p.m.
they just
Pacific.
stole the name, but that was a great movie. If you've never seen that, it was awfully good.
I don't know if you have.
I haven't seen any of the movies.
I don't think you have a high interest level in westerns. I think that's going to be a tough sell for you.
Yeah, it is.
What I would like for him to do is to watch all of Lonesome Dove. And
No idea what that is.
The next time I come to town, if he's watched Lonesome Dove, I'm going to take him to Weatherford, where two of the main real live characters who the story was based on partially are buried. And I can show you where that is. That's pretty interesting. And Weatherford's not far.
No, we in fact we have a lot of people in our band that live in Weatherford.
Yeah. About 35, 40 minutes from
Von
here.
Miller's from Weatherford.
Yeah, and so, Dad, your all-time favorite story that's ever been put out, besides maybe the Bible, is Lonesome Dove. Like, top of the list.
Yes, that got me into becoming an avid reader. I was just transfixed by the show, and then a friend of mine at work got a copy of the book, and he started reading it, and I said, well, Jimmy, my buddy Jimmy Ploche, a guy who coached with me. I said,
Shout out to Ploche.
Yeah, I said, well, Jimmy, look, when you're finished, can I borrow the book? Oh yeah, sure you can. So I came back about 3-4 weeks later. I said, how you coming with Lonesome Dove? Oh man, it's great, Ned, it's great. So, well, how far along are you? He says, I'm on page 17.
Oh.
I said, Jimmy, there's like 800 pages in this book. I want to read it, before I die.
And did he tell you they also sell this book at the local bookstore that you can get your own copy?
He told me I like to take my time. And I told this story to my wife, Honeybee, and she bought a copy from me, and I started the next day.
Terrific.
And it was a great book, too.
Did you finish before him?
Oh, Lord, yeah.
Yeah, he's probably still reading it now.
He may be.
Sounds like it.
Oh, buddy.
Have you read chapter 6? It's incredible. But we're not doing Lonesome Dove. We are doing what you said is also in your top 5 favorite movies. It's a movie that stars Tobey Maguire, Russell. What's his name? What's the
Russell Wilson.
No, it's not Russell Wilson. What's the guy's name?
Oh no, Jeff
Bridges.
Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. And
Elizabeth Banks.
Yeah, Elizabeth Banks.
There's
really no other names.
William H. Macy had a great part.
He had we're going to talk about him in a minute. But yeah, it's a movie called SEABISCUIT, ladies and gentlemen. SEABISCUIT. And so as we always do, we run through our list of questions about the movie SEABISCUIT. Justice, first question is always for you, and that is, what did you expect going into the movie?
I had no expectations other than it to be a decent movie. and I had no idea what it was about.
What made you think it was going to be decent? Just because Grandpa said it was in his top 5?
Yeah, and I heard it was a true story.
Yeah.
And it was about a horse. So.
Now, have you ever watched a horse race?
No.
You've never seen one?
I mean, like, I've watched I've watched, like, the thing at the end of the Kentucky thingy.
Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, the Kentucky Derby.
So you've watched, like, the highlights of the Kentucky Derby on ESPN Sports Center, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a big deal anymore. It's incredible. We were talking about it as we were watching the movie, like, horse racing back then would have been equivalent to, like, NFL football.
The Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge, huge deal, especially the Triple Crown, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Triple Crown was a big deal. It still is, especially when someone wins the Preakness and the Kentucky Derby. Then the Belmont is a huge deal.
Well, but what I'm saying is, like, if I don't know, I think someone won the Triple Crown a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I could not tell you that.
American Pharaoh.
I couldn't tell you that horse's name if you put a gun in my head.
American Pharaoh was the winner.
I didn't even know what the Triple Crown was till you guys met.
Right, but years ago, when you were coming up, everyone knew the name Seabiscuit. Everyone knew what was the War Admiral.
War Admiral.
Everyone knew these horses.
Yeah.
And in fact, ESPN did a top 100 athletes of all time. I think it was in like 2001 or 2002. And they put one of the great horses, I forget which horse it was.
Probably Secretariat.
Secretariat, yeah. Secretariat was like number 10 in ESPN's top top 100 athletes of all time.
He was a great racehorse. He was the best. To me, he's the best of all time.
Yeah. And is there a movie about Secretariat?
There was a lady that played in Lonesome Dove was the star of it, Diane Lane. Anyway, it was all about Seabiscuit.
Secretariat.
Secretariat.
But Seabiscuit is a better movie than Secretariat.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Justice, give us the basic plot. What is the plot of the movie Seabiscuit? And if you haven't seen this movie, I don't know what to tell you. It came out in 2005.
2003.
I mean, come on. Right. There's no reason. If you care about this movie, or if you want to know what we think about it, then sure, press pause, go rent it, go find it somewhere and watch it, and then come back to the podcast. But we're going to go ahead and spoil the movie. So,
it's the beginning of it was super complicated because they went on a rant about 1910, the invention of cars. I don't even remember most of the beginning because it was like so weird. I felt like we met the characters too fast, but that's just me. So we meet some guy. He has his shop and he's like, "Oh, I can make money from helping people get their cars straight." Then he rents a farm or gets a farm and replaces the horse places, the horse cells, with cars. So instead of horses, there's cars.
The horse stables.
Horse stables.
Became a garage, basically.
They weren't prison cells for the horses.
Okay. Whatever you say.
You called them horse cells.
Yeah, they are. They're cells.
That's
for these
now officially
animals.
the name of this episode. # horse cells. Keep going.
Okay. And then we meet this kid. He's with this other family that looks exactly like the family we just met. And it's him. He's riding a horse, and they're saying he's got a talent. He's gonna be great.
Talking about Red.
Yeah. And what's his name? Like John?
I think it's Johnny.
Yeah. Johnny.
Yeah. So.
But everybody calls him Red.
Yeah.
Because he had red hair.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the same person that walked up to Edgar and said, "That child is Ned," walked up to this person and said, "You will be called Red." And, I wonder if that person only knew how to say words that rhyme with red. Your name is Dead. Your name is Fred. You got any other names? No, I'm fresh out. That's it. It happened 4 times, and then he died. I think that's what might have happened.
That would be great.
I doubt it.
Well,
that's our new family story.
And in the Fike fan fiction section, that's what we think happened. All right, keep going. So far you've told about what did the lead character
Red.
So there's Red, and what's the owner
Red,
guy? The
Fred,
old guy. What's his name?
Cowboy
George?
Boy, George. I don't know.
You're not good at the name.
I'm not good at characters. You know from the last episode.
So you got the car designer, and he's rich.
And then we skip forward to 1929.
And what happened in 1929?
The Great Depression.
And what, as you would describe it to the listeners, is the Great Depression? What happened there?
Bye money.
Okay.
What else you want me to say? Money went bye.
But why did it happen?
Because we bought too many cars. I don't know. The farthest I've got is like 1890. That's the farthest I've got in history class.
Okay, so you're not up on the 1900s yet.
Yeah, we don't do that till like sophomore year.
Grandpa, you were alive back then. What happened in 1929?
No, I was not quite that alive. My father was. My father lived through that. But the stock market crashed because so many people were buying stock on credit, and they called for the credit so early, and then the market just crashed, and all these companies that were thriving went out of business, and all the people that had jobs were losing jobs. It was unemployment across the country. I can't give you the exact stats, but they were between 25 and 50% at times. And the people that did work, they weren't getting paid as much because there wasn't as much money to pay people with. It was tough times in this country in the 1930s. Yeah, I think the movie did a good job of explaining that.
And there's that scene where Red comes home, and he couldn't have been, 13, 12 years old, and he's got $2 silver, and he hands it to his father.
Yeah.
And his dad's like, "Where did you get this? How did you come across $2?" And he figures out, like you were saying, Justice, he figures out that this kid actually has a talent to ride horses, and he can actually make money and provide for himself in that way, even at 13. So there's that really tough scene where...
And then his parents just decide, yeah, we're going to leave you by.
Well, but what they did was they made a sacrifice for themselves, or really on his behalf. They probably wanted him to stay with them. It wasn't that they didn't want him. It was, we can't provide for you, and so we're going to put you in a situation where you can have a better life without us. And of course, I think Red would have been like, "Man, I'd rather be with you than without you." That's what it seemed like.
Yeah.
You think Red was maybe felt rejected when he
It was just, for me, it was like, because I didn't know anything about the Great Depression other than it happened after World War I and it happened before World War II. So that's pretty much all I knew going in.
What about the horse trainer? You remember anything about him?
He was a cowboy,
Yeah.
and he was on that farm that the guy bought, and he was training some horses to be...
What kind of knack did he have with horses?
He talked to them.
Yeah, he was one of the original horse whisperers, I think.
Yeah, and specifically wild ones.
Yeah.
The wilder the better. He knew what to do with them. All right, so that gets us to... and then the important plot point, I think, was that...
the owner's child died in a car wreck.
Yeah, he was driving his truck. The kid couldn't have been, 8, 9 years old?
Yeah.
He looked like he was 8.
And he's out here joyriding a truck. He's too free. And then he died. And that was tough. And so you got a bunch of broken people. I think that was kind of the theme of the movie.
Yes.
Yeah, and then at the end they said, spoiler, they said SEABISCUIT was what was it? Like we didn't...
Everybody thought we fixed SEABISCUIT, but it turned out SEABISCUIT fixed us.
Yeah.
Yeah. You skipped way ahead. But
let me go over the main plot now. So, owner meets lady, fall in love, boom, just like that. Get money, decide to get horses, meet Des Bryant, 80-year-old looking cowboy.
What? Des Bryant?
Oh, sorry. So he looks like Jordy Nelson. Sorry.
Okay. If you put Jordy Nelson and Des Bryant next to one another, you could easily discern the difference between those two fellas.
Okay, let me keep going, okay?
Okay.
All right, Jordan Nelson, 80-year-old version, is good with this white horse that was going to be killed, but then he saved him. So now they're friends, and now he's hired by owner guy to make racehorse. Find Seabiscuit.
Why are you talking like a caveman?
I don't know. You put me in like
Owner hire to find horse. He look left right. Like,
all right.
what?
Well, why don't you do the rest of this? Because I'm
No,
terrible.
I just don't know why you're skipping verbs and predicates. I don't understand.
I don't know. I don't even. All right. So, okay. Next, they get there, and they find Red, who's working with this horse. I'm not sure if it's Seabiscuit. I'm pretty sure it's not. And he's riding around with him, screaming curse words at him, saying "you piece of poop," and being really mad. And and then after that they get Seabiscuit, who is a championship racehorse grandson and son. So he has like this background, and but the thing is, his genes are terrible, and he's super small and super pathetic at 6 months old.
I don't think his genes were terrible. I think he was just kind of not interested. They couldn't figure out how to motivate him to run.
And he
had all that it took to be a great racehorse.
But
he just wasn't like he liked to lay down and eat a lot and sleep. He reminds me of someone kind of at this table.
Oh, yeah. I think you mean Grandpa, because all he does is watch baseball. Moving on now. So they send him on to this place where they train racehorses. And pretty much they do the training. And in the end, they just say, okay, we're going to use him to get these other horses' confidence up. And it was always on the left side.
Yes. Seabiscuit's kind of thing was he didn't like to be a front runner. Mm-hmm. He wanted to have somebody kind of out ahead of him. And then once he saw a horse that was beating him, boy, he picked up the pace and took it to him.
But he was always on the right side.
Yes. So then a lot more happens. They kind of learn how to race with Seabiscuit. They win most of their races. They lose one kind of important one. What was the name of that race where they lost, Dad?
That was the Santa Anita Handicap.
Yes, and where is that?
It's in Santa Anita, California, in the L.A. area.
In the L.A. area. Okay, so he loses that race, but then he goes on to kind of become a champion, and he becomes the people's champion. One of my favorite characters in the movie is that William H. Macy character. And what's his name?
His name is McLaughlin, and he calls himself Tick-Tock McLaughlin.
Tick-Tock McLaughlin.
Yeah.
He was the original podcaster, I think.
Yeah.
He did.
He was working so hard. Like he even had like someone in the background going like boom.
I like how he would point to her and she would do things and she was like, I know what I'm supposed to do, and then he'd point to her, she'd hit the gong. Yeah, it was fun. So
and then he got the giant scoop he wanted. It was fun.
Yeah.
I felt like he could have had his own movie.
Yeah, that guy was pretty great. So then they figure out that even though Seabiscuit is a great horse, there's one other horse that's everyone would probably imagine is superior in every way to Seabiscuit, and that's War Admiral. And so am I to understand, Dad, that most of the races that they were winning with Seabiscuit were kind of on the West Coast?
Yeah.
Yes.
And most of the races that War Admiral was winning was on the East Coast?
Yeah. That was the dynamic. Like the King of the West versus the King of the East.
Yeah. So they put out the challenge that they'll race War Admiral anywhere, anytime for $100,000, which I can't imagine how much money that would be in these days. Like that would have to be upwards to 10, 20 million, huh?
Well, at least $1 million. Figure it that way. And $1 million was unheard of in those days.
Yeah, 100,000.
Yeah. Babe Ruth's salary was $100,000 in those days.
Wow.
And they asked Babe, well, how come you should make more money than the president? And Babe Ruth's answer was, well, I had a better year than him.
They don't make them like that. So they race. Spoiler alert.
Wait. You're forgetting the main part.
What?
Red is doing a favor for one of his friends.
Yes.
And he breaks every bone in his, was it right or left leg?
I think it was his left leg.
In his left leg. So it's
it must have been his right leg. His right leg.
Yeah. It's completely shattered.
Yeah,
So they say he's never going to be able to ride again, and he's going to have to sit out the race.
Yeah.
And he might not be able to walk again.
And that's when they bring in the substitute rider. His friend, was his friend named George?
Yeah, his friend was George.
Yeah. Well, who's Kurt Russell? What was his name in the movie?
Kurt Russell.
Not Kurt Russell. What's his name? Lebowski. Bridges. Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, he was Charles Howard.
Okay, Charlie. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so they hire George. They win. They beat War Admiral. And then there's kind of this, like, epilogue that happens. It's like, you feel like that should be the end of the movie. Like, wow, okay. We beat War Admiral. We proved it. Seabiscuit's a better horse, a better racer than War Admiral. Congratulations.
Yep, but then the next race afterwards, George is riding him, and in the middle of the race, he just stops, and, he can't gallop, which is, them running. So it's like a huge debacle, and they find out, we can either do this or put him down to bed, which I would never do.
Yeah, so Seabiscuit is now injured.
Yes.
So now you've got these two kind of knucklehead people. You got Red and Seabiscuit, and they're both injured. They both have leg injuries, and they're both told you'll never ride again, right? They tell Red you're never going to ride again. They tell Charlie Seabiscuit will never race again. And somehow these two guys, they start hanging out together, and they start kind of fixing one another. I think there was a scene earlier in the movie where Red threw all his books away. Remember that?
He was going to. I don't know if he ever did it.
Well,
he didn't.
He had him over the bridge. He was going to drop him in some kind of. I don't know if he did though.
And that was kind of his. Those books were kind of his tie to his father.
Yeah.
Because his dad had really quizzed him on really learning Shakespeare and the poems and stuff and
classics.
And so I love that scene where they're kind of both laid out in a pasture somewhere, Seabiscuit and Red, and he's reading. Mm-hmm. And as they're walking through the meadow, Red is kind of telling Seabiscuit stories about Shakespeare and this is what that meant. And this is kind of how we fit into the story. And so they're kind of fixing each other. It's kind of neat to watch that. And so it gets to the point where it seems like, wow, maybe Seabiscuit can actually race again. And so they call George in, the jockey. George rides him and says, man, I don't feel anything wrong with him. I think he's better. So they decide to race in that one race that they had lost, the Santa Clarita?
Santa Anita.
And now here it comes, Santa Anita race. And Red's super ticked off because he's like, I want to race this race. Like this is important. This is a moment of redemption. I lost this race really because of hubris. I lost this race and I want another chance at winning it. So they go through all this rigmarole with the doctors, and then they finally give him permission. And now the day comes, and sure enough, he's kind of, as the race is going, Seabiscuit is way in the back of the pack. And George is now on a different horse, right? And George, I think you're right, Dad. I think he slowed that horse down so that he could kind of get neck and neck with Seabiscuit. And that's all really Seabiscuit needed to fire him up. And so it's pretty cool. Seabiscuit wins the race, and that's the end of the movie, right?
Right.
So, okay, so Justice, what about this movie? Here, this is always a good question. What about this movie went totally over your head? It's a movie about life in the early 1900s. How much of it were you like, I don't get it, what are we doing here?
Most of the beginning was super confusing to me because I didn't know anything about the invention of cars, and I didn't know anything about 1929 and some of the, and most of like the jokes from that stuff and the books and stuff like that.
Keep going.
So what I was trying to say is most of the movie, other than there was horses, they raced horses, and then Seabiscuit won against horses. Like I knew nothing about the Admiral, nothing about everything in the movie other than what they focused on.
Yeah. Let's talk about best scene in the movie. I have a favorite best scene. Dad, why don't you go first? What's your favorite scene in the movie?
My favorite scene is during the match race. Seabiscuit is behind because they pulled him back so he could, he like you said, he likes to run from behind, and then when he catches up, when he makes eye contact with that other horse, pow, he'll go right by him. Well, the moment in the movie when that's done, the jockey on War Admiral's name was Charlie something. I don't remember his last name, but Charlie was the jockey of War Admiral. And when old George gets Seabiscuit right up by War Admiral, he knows he's got him. He knows how much is left in that horse.
Yeah.
So he says, he says, okay, let's go. And as Seabiscuit's passing him up, he looks at the jockey, says, so long, Charlie. And boom, off he goes. And Seabiscuit wins the race. And to this day, whenever the Houston Astro hits a home run, as the ball is leaving the ballpark, you'll always hear me say, so long, Charlie. And my wife never understood why I did that. And just watching that movie with us yesterday, she said, oh, that's why you say that.
That's hilarious. That's funny. What's yours, Justice? What was your favorite scene of the movie?
So my favorite, I think, was the scene when Red is in there and he's crippled and he's talking to George about what to do, and he's like telling him all the stuff, and then like he says, close the door, and then the stuff he says after that was funny for me.
What did he say?
I'm forgetting, but it was really funny for me.
Same thing what I was talking about.
Yeah. About
that eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, my favorite scene in the movie, it's really kind of two scenes. It's when Charles is looking for a racehorse, and he's also looking for a jockey. Mm-hmm. And there's that moment where the cowboy guy is kind of looking to his right. He's watching these people try to bring in Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit's huffing and puffing and losing his mind. And he looks to his left, and Red is in a fist fight with 3 or 4 guys.
Yeah.
And he kind of keeps going back and forth and looking, and it's like the parallel between these two creatures, Red and Seabiscuit. It was like they're meant to be together because they're the same person. They're both underdogs. They're both fighters. And they're both kind of a little snarly, you know. And so he looks at both of them and looks at Charles and says, well, you know, I think we have a winner here, you know. I love that. And I love the same parallel at the end of the movie when they're both broken, that, you know, and they're walking through that meadow. I talked about it a minute ago. They're walking through that meadow. They're healing one another. So they're the same kind of person. They're fighting for survival and for some kind of meaning in life. And at the end of the movie, they're kind of healing together. I just think that was beautifully well done.
Yeah.
Justice, who was your favorite character in the movie and why?
I think definitely Red. Even though I felt like he was built to be the main character, I felt like his character arc was great. The only thing I didn't like about him was like the boxing stuff. Like I didn't really understand that part of the movie.
I think that was during the Depression. And when he couldn't get mounts or he wasn't winning races, so he wasn't getting paid, he could make money by fighting. Even if you lose, he was getting some money for it. It hurt him in his racing career, though.
Yep.
Yeah, people kind of didn't really take a liking to him, right? I mean, he seemed kind of like a reject almost. And he was a little heavy for a jockey.
He was tall. Yeah, it was hard for him to keep his weight.
So that was kind of interesting. You get a jockey that's too heavy, a racehorse who's too small.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition there. Dad, who's your favorite character in the movie?
I don't know if it would be my favorite, but I thought really interesting was Charles's second wife, played by Elizabeth Banks. I thought she did
I thought
a
you were
terrific.
going to say George because he said so long, Charlie.
Yeah, well, I like that. But George was a good character.
That's a good character.
He was an all-around good guy.
Can I change my favorite character? It's McGinnis. To the podcast guy.
The podcast guy.
Yeah.
TikTok. I'll tell you a funny story about that. I don't know how funny it is, but we had a guy where I
Little
worked.
known fact.
A little
Oh,
known
are
fact.
you about to tell us a Ned Fike little known fact?
Well, this thing really stuck. We had a guy at work named Dave McLaughlin, and really good guy. He was from Boston, matter of fact, had a funny Boston accent. Anyway, I had seen the movie, and I liked old Dave McLaughlin, so I said, all right, TikTok. And the name stuck. Everybody called him TikTok. And we have a deal at work where if you can't work one day, if somebody needs a substitute, they'll call you and say, can you work this day for me and I'll work that day for you, a flip-flop.
Uh-huh.
And one day old Dave called me and said, Ned, this is TikTok. I need a flip-flop. And I busted out left. And believe me, everybody at work called that guy TikTok until he finally had to retire, and he did pass away. But he was a really good guy. And anyway, that name sure stuck.
Yeah. So your favorite character was the second wife.
Yeah. I thought she had some good influence on her husband, without being pushy about it. But she really loved him. It wasn't for the money that he had, because I think she was well off herself. I don't know whose family they said she was a part of. But anyway, she was a good wife for him, because his first wife, when the boy died, just had no desire to have anything else to do with any memory of that boy. So she left her husband, left the farm, everything, and that hurt Charles Howard. What was it? Charles Howard. It hurt him anyway. But the new wife sure did help him.
Yeah, I think my favorite character was George. I loved that.
Good
I loved
guy.
that character, man. I love that he was a winner. Guy was a winner, but he wasn't self-involved. He wanted to see good things happen for his friends, and he was willing to sacrifice his own success in moments in order to see others succeed. It was just really selfless, great character. I loved him. He made me cry a couple times. All right, 2 more questions. Where do you recognize the Bible? Whoa. Where do you recognize the Bible in the story of Seabiscuit?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I think with the way that they showed, Nick, go first. You go.
No, you're on a roll.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
go
Why
for
are
it.
you interrupting yourself?
I'm still thinking of an answer. You go ahead, please.
I'm forgetting the names. I'm sorry. So pretty much, with how courageous they are, I guess.
So they were courageous, and that's
They showed godly manner.
okay. All right. I feel like you just gave the Sunday school answer, man.
I did.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say something about.
Is it Jesus?
I was gonna say something about the fruits. The fruits from, I'm forgetting the names.
The fruits of the Spirit?
Yes, the fruits of the Spirit. I think they showed the fruits of the Spirit.
Okay, interesting. All right, Dad, how about you?
Well, I think God and Jesus would teach us that no matter what happens, to keep your faith in yourself and in your religion. They didn't say much about their religion, but I think.
Other than that one scene, they were in the church and Red didn't know any of the lines.
They were singing the hymns. Yeah, that was pretty cool. But I think you learn that if you keep your faith, and some bad things happen to everybody in the film, but they didn't give up. They didn't give up on life, and I think the Lord would want you to keep on anyway. Do the best you can with what you got, and not to the kind of success that those guys had, but by trying, it'll help you be able to handle those things. The thing about the depression, that was, I think, part of that too. It gave people hope. The narrator part was great.
Yeah.
Talking about the Depression and all the WPA and the CCC. It gives people hope and pride in themselves because they didn't really have that, out of a job and no way to get a job.
Charles, he seemed to really want to inspire people with the story of Seabiscuit that you can do it. Like you can go work for your dreams, go fight for your dreams.
Yeah.
You guys missed the most obvious biblical parallel.
Well, you know what? Don't judge me.
I'm not judging, but I mean, think about it. It's the most war admiral is Goliath.
Oh, they did. Yeah, David and Goliath. I didn't think of that. Yeah,
Come on, I mean that's
War Admiral was 18 hands. Seabiscuit was 14 hands.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's David and Goliath.
Well, that's just too obvious.
I think they mentioned that in the movie, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean that's the most obvious biblical kind of overture in the movie is, and David beats Goliath. Slays him cold. So anyway,
I overthought it.
Yeah, well, no, I like your answer too. All right, so let's give this movie a grade. Dad, obviously you on a scale of 1 to 10. Do we do 1 to 10 or 1 to 5?
We usually do out of 10, but last episode we did out of 5.
Okay, let's do out of 10. Scale of 1 to 10, Dad. How many Fikes would you give Seabiscuit?
I put 10.
10 Fikes.
That's me.
Going to Seabiscuit. All right. I'll give mine. I would give it, a solid 8.
Solid 4 Fikes.
You're giving it 4?
Yeah,
I thought you liked it.
It's a decent movie.
Wow, man. So
nothing more, nothing less.
So you give it a 4 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5?
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. That's pretty tough. That's a bad score on Rotten Tomatoes.
All right, if we're going off of Rotten Tomatoes scores, then I'll give it a 6.
Oh. Okay.
Your opinion is
it's a good movie.
You liked
and it's
it.
not bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so man, we talked for a long time about that movie. So because of that, and because we don't want all of our listeners' ears to bleed, we're going to dig right into the question game, and we're going to have some fun questions with Grandpa. This is a very special Father's Day episode of the question game, so this is going to get interesting. Here we go.
For everybody here tonight.
Asking all these questions, why you asking all these questions? Asking all these questions, why you asking all these questions? Asking all these questions, why you ask so many questions?
And let me ask you something.
I got a question.
Let the games begin.
Okay, here we go. Dad, if you've been listening to this podcast, so you kind of know what happens here, right? We have listeners send us in a bunch of kind of random, goofy questions.
They're hard questions.
Yes, and we're forced to answer them. So, I'll start with you, Dad. I'll ask you one of these questions. You ready?
I hope so.
If you knew, Dad, that you were going to win $1 million tomorrow, what would you change today? You're going to win $1 million tomorrow. What would you change today?
That's a hard question.
That question comes to us from one of my favorite people on the earth, Rob. You know who you are, Big Perm. But Rob has asked you a stumper.
He doesn't mean what would I do with the money. What would I change today before I get the money?
What would you change about your life? Because tomorrow you're going to have $1 million. What are you going to change?
Oh, I think I would try to make arrangements to make things easier for my children.
Oh, I like that so far. So you give us what, like $20 each?
Oh, maybe 25.
That's generous.
Oh, that's so
generous.
nice.
That's
Thank
generous.
you.
Justice. This is from your youth pastor. Are you ready?
Oh, Jack, what did you do this
No,
time?
from Nathan. He says if the Packers won the Super Bowl every year and the Broncos were the worst team every year, what would you do?
Which is unrealistic.
Right, but what would you do? Would you switch teams and become a Packers fan if that happened?
No. I would appreciate Aaron Rodgers' greatness to carry a terrible team like the Packers to a championship every year. And after Aaron Rodgers retires, I would say this is ridiculous. So that's it.
Okay. All right.
You'd still you'd still
be a
support the
Broncos
Broncos.
fan.
Well, that's good.
I would say more of the Jacks would be my favorite.
I
but-
think you come from a long line of believers in terrible teams.
Well, you inherited
They're
that.
not terrible.
Well, no, what I mean is,
Well, even when they were bad,
Or I would
you
focus
stuck with
more
them.
on LSU.
your grandpa has been a fan of the Houston Astros since they were the Colt 45s.
Oh yeah, true.
How many years did you have to wait, Dad, before you got a World Series championship?
They won it all in their 56th year.
50. So for 55 years, you dealt with the Lastros.
Well, they weren't always last, but they were, even in years when they were really good, the ending was painfully,
Yeah.
what's the word? Just painful. I'll
Yeah.
just put it like that.
I know that the team that won the Super Bowl has a special place in your heart, but is that your favorite Astros team of all time? Or do you have a different...
It's not the Super Bowl.
Like there was one year where that was your favorite Astros team.
Yeah, I guess it would be because, you know, Richie, all year last year, as they were playing and doing so well, I told people, I always say, wait till next year. I say, next year has come. This is next year.
Winter has come.
Even if we had
Winter.
lost the World Series, I was good with what they had done all year long, and still that they won it. It was it was really hard to believe.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. What are your expectations since Grandpa here is wearing an LSU Tiger shirt, which you people can't see because you are viewers, not listeners?
You said it backwards.
Okay. Does not matter. What are your expectations for this year?
Is that me or you?
Both.
you dog?
All of us.
I'm an optimist. I'm saying 10-2.
Dad,
No.
Dad, you don't believe that.
I'll pull up the schedule right now, and I'll tell you how wrong you are.
That's really the theme of this show, is Justice telling everybody how wrong they are. That's why the show exists.
Well, no one agrees with me, but the offensive line is going to be solid. The defensive line is going to
All
be
right.
solid.
First game, Miami. That's a loss.
Nope, I think we're going to win that. Miami is not going to be that good, but go ahead.
Miami's going to be great. Then we play Seattle, Los Angeles. SELA.
What? Seattle lost at Southeast Louisiana.
Okay.
Seattle,
You had
Los
me
Angeles. SELA is now Seattle, Los Angeles.
Southeastern from Hannah. How
All
do
right.
you think? What are you saying?
That's a win.
Thank you.
LSU versus Auburn. We're at Auburn, so I'm not that confident.
Well, now, Auburn could have played for the national championship last year, but who beat them in Baton Rouge?
Us.
Right.
Last
But
year.
keyword
Right. So, Dad,
at LSU.
what are they going to do to us this year?
That's the thing.
I don't think Auburn's going to be that good, but
I mean,
So you've got
Auburn will be
he
favored.
thinks
in that
everybody
game.
in the SEC West is going to be terrible.
So you've got a W there for LSU.
Possibly.
And then LA Tech versus LSU win. LSU versus Ole Miss win. LSU versus Florida. Florida could win. Georgia,
Is that game at Florida
It's
or at
at-
LSU?
Yeah, it's at
It's
Florida.
Yeah, we have to play them there.
That's so wrong.
Yeah, because of the. Let's see.
And they got a new coach, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good riddance to the last one. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't like that guy.
Then we have Georgia versus LSU
Come
at
on.
LSU.
Georgia's
Now,
the
the
class.
games-
The only hope we have, the game is at LSU.
That's no hope. Mississippi State versus LSU.
I don't have the right to hope? Is that what you're saying? Did you watch that movie we just watched?
Okay. Mississippi State at LSU. That
Should
could be a win.
Should be a win.
Bye week, and then we have the big one, Alabama at LSU.
It's at LSU?
Yeah.
Look out, Bama.
Wow, you heard it here
You
first.
sure that game's at LSU?
Yes, it's at LSU.
Okay. You got the schedule. I beg your pardon.
And then we have LSU at Arkansas,
That's a win.
and then we have
Arkansas, okay.
Rice at LSU,
That's
Rice.
a win.
and then LSU versus Texas A&M.
And
Has Texas
That's a
A&M Has Texas A&M ever beaten us?
No.
Hold on, they
have.
got Jimbo now.
Well, they will. They'll beat us sometime.
I think Jimbo's good.
Yeah.
I think there's 4 losses in there, man.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go 8-4, 9-4 if we win the bowl game.
Well, see, a lot of people in Baton Rouge are saying 7-5, 6-6. So you guys are more optimistic than the people in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
I just think
I love Coach O. I want him to win.
If Coach O doesn't do good this season, he's gone.
Well, let me give you a little piece of information I heard.
Okay.
And
Breaking news.
Okay.
No.
Yes, this is.
You got sources?
Steve Ensminger is the new offensive coordinator, right?
Yes.
Okay, a guy at work knows his father.
This is so backwoods right now.
No. This guy knows Steve Ensminger's father.
He cut in his cousin's hairdresser.
No, this came from Steve Ensminger's father.
Okay.
To my friend, and what he told him is this new guy from Ohio State is terrible.
Okay, but
That's
Dad,
what I'm
so
told.
what? He's terrible, but like,
How does that?
Who is
How
this
does that
kid?
support what I was saying?
you
earlier?
just said that we're gonna go like 12-0.
10
And the reason that you have given us for why we're going to be so great is
It's because our starting
because the
QB
starting quarterback we heard from Steve Ensminger's cousin's uncle's hairdresser is terrible, and that's why we're going to win.
Now, America, you heard me. I didn't say anything about 12-0, but
He said 10-2.
I'm just trying to give.
10 wins and 2 losses.
I'll let you decide on your own.
No.
This is a fact.
This is not a fact.
First of all, it's not a fact. Somebody's opinion can't be a fact. We are way off the rails here. Okay, so the point is that you say LSU's going 10-2.
What are you saying?
I say 8-4. What do you think?
I said 8-4 or 7-5.
It's going down.
Going down.
Just because I told him that fact.
No, what?
He's an influencer.
He's not even the starting QB. I don't even know who this kid is.
It doesn't matter. He's terrible.
That's just terrible.
Charles Barkley saw him the other day. He said he's terrible. Ernie, I saw this quarterback the other day. He was absolutely terrible. He was throwing with his left hand, and he's supposed to be right-handed, Ernie. Anyway, somebody give me Krispy Kreme. All right, so, Dad, let's ask you another difficult question. Are you ready?
I didn't do too good on the last one, but
This will be the last question before we
Dad.
go.
Why did kamikaze pilots wear helmets? Could you explain this to us?
Because I got this one.
Oh,
I
no.
got this.
Oh no!
I got it.
Our starting QB is terrible. He's just terrible.
They didn't want to bust the windshield before they hit the ship.
What? Are we talking about what?
Okay. All right. In all seriousness, this is a Father's Day episode, so I thought we'd give a moment for each of us to talk about just kind of what we have learned in regards to being a son, being a father. So, Justice, I'll ask you to go first. What is something that you have learned from your grandfather in your 13 years of life? What's something that Grandpa has taught you or that you've picked up on, aside from random LSU rumors that actually contradict the point you're trying to make? What are some of the things that you've learned from your grandfather?
Okay, so many little known facts. It's hard to pick one.
Little known facts. I just want to say real quick for the listeners, one thing you need to know about Ned Fike, my dad, is that he is the absolute grand poobah, the king of little known facts. And so what my dad likes to do is he will tap you on the arm twice, 2 taps. And he will say, "Richie, did you know?" That's how it always starts. "Did you know?" And then he will say something like this: "That third baseman, his mama works at Target and his father was a Guatemalan bean picker." And then he says, "Little known fact." And then it's just 1 tap on the arm, "Little known fact." And so that has become absolutely kind of the mantra as we talk about my dad, is that he is the king of little known facts.
Yeah.
I don't know how you know about the Guatemalan bean picker, but then one day I asked you and you said it was in the Advocate. And so my dad is also the only person in America that is keeping the newspaper business alive. They love it when you come to town in Fort Worth because they're like, man, we just sold 3 newspapers this week. It's incredible. It's done picked up. Business is picking up. All right, how about you? So, Justice, I interrupted you, but he's the king of little known facts. What's your thought? What did you learn from Grandpa?
Maybe just the wonders of knowing about sports, because because back when we lived in Colorado, you guys sent me over to Louisiana for a month. So what happened would be I would be there and I would watch baseball with Grandpa. It was the Houston Cubs game, and he said, "Little known fact, the Cubs are terrible." And it was in like 2011 when they were like at rock bottom.
Yeah. He said that to goad me because he knows how much I love the Cubs, but that's all right.
That was before I knew what sports was.
Yeah, you weren't really into sports back then.
I wasn't into sports till I turned 10. So.
Dad, I'll tell you what I learned from you, and then you can talk about Grandpa, my grandpa. I learned from you just absolute. This is one of the most important things that I've ever learned in my life, is that when people are laughing at you, laugh with them. There was a moment where I came home from school one day and I was telling you about how all the kids were calling me Itchy Richie because I had eczema. And you said, well, there's actually a lot of truth to that. You do seem to itch quite a bit. I was like, shut up, Dad. You're like, well, I just prefer to live by the truth,
Now I know where
And so then he says to me, he says, how about this? Tomorrow, when those kids start to laugh at you, just start laughing with them. Because actually, it's actually kind of funny. You do itch a lot. And I was like,
when did I start sounding like Charles Barkley?
I don't know. Charles Barkley down here. He's down here. You stay up in this range around here. Anyway, so the next day I go to school, and sure enough, the kids are like, Itchy Richie. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. I do itch a lot. And I was like half smiling, half crying. And they were like, something's terribly wrong with this child. And they moved on. They found somebody else to make fun of. And so even though that's not the way I still respond when people make fun of me, but I think it's important to be able to find humor. And I think you taught me this, to find humor in the things that make you different than everybody else. If we were all just the same, that'd be pretty boring, And so you taught me that, Dad. So I appreciate that. So now when people make fun of me, I laugh with them. And nobody makes more fun of me than my senior pastor, Chris Freeland. That guy, his love language is like sarcasm on a real level. So Chris, and I know Chris loves to listen to this podcast. So Chris, thanks for all the love because he teases me relentlessly.
What does he say?
Well, he likes to make fun of the fact that I write songs for the Newsboys. He thinks that's quite humorous. And anytime that any topic of music comes up, he goes, Fike wrote a song that for the Newsboys called "We Believe," and he thinks that's very funny.
How is that funny?
Because
I'm sorry, Chris, but that's extremely stupidous.
Yeah, stupidous. Oh wow, new
I
word.
bet if he stopped teasing you, you wouldn't like it though.
No, yeah, it's fine. And it totally lets me know that he's thinking about me, so I appreciate that.
That's right.
Okay. So, Dad, what about you? What would you say is one of the major things you learned from my grandpa, Tom Fike, my namesake?
Well, Dad always talked about one of his goals in life was to be a good father, and what his objectives for his children were that they be happy. And I've always thought about that. I don't know how good a father I was, I'm sure I wish I could have been better, but I'm proud of my children, and what he said about all the children owed to us is that they be happy, and if they're happy, your mama and I are happy.
Yeah.
And so he instilled that in me. So I don't expect people to be millionaires and world famous, but just happy. And you're raising your children, and you got a wonderful wife and a wonderful family, and your mama and I are very proud of you for that. Now your sister is fighting it, but she's fighting it. She's putting on the fight, and
Right.
one of these days it's going to come through for her. As long as she keeps trying.
We love you, Katie.
Yeah. So that's what Dad always talked to me about, and I think I've always I appreciate him saying that. And I can say this too: your great grandfather. This was on my mother's side, Grandy, we called him. I'll never forget going to his funeral, and the preacher, Brother Allen, kept calling him a good man.
Huh.
And that's I hope whenever I pass away that people will think, oh, that was a good man.
Yeah.
If you've done that, you've lived a good life.
Well, little known fact, everybody does say that about you, Dad.
Oh, they may not know all the facts. That's the problem.
Well, with that said, to all you fathers and all you sons out there and daughters, we love you, and we hope that you would lean into your dad this Father's Day. Let him know what you learned from him. And if there's some things that you'd want to share about that, we'd love to hear that. You can email us at thefikeclub@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at thefikeclub. And we'd love to hear from you. Have a great Father's Day. Go give your dad a hug if he's in the same town. If not, give him a call. Tell him you love him. And we'll see you next time around. God bless you guys. Peace.
Goodbye, America.